Saw this tweet from Wild Ute, the professor. And I'll tell you, he's one of my favorite followers, been on this show multiple times. And he said that Utah lost 500,000 viewers per game in the Big 12. The data, the breakdown, the path forward, that because of the Big 12 conference, Utah is dying in viewership. Well, then here comes Cougs. TV ratings say otherwise. They see growth. Here comes Go Cougs. Utah can just go back to the Pac-12 then. And here goes the cold, hard facts. And Christian, I want to get your thoughts on this. Stan Bino tweets, from 2013 to 2021, Baylor averaged 1.7 million viewers. Utah averaged 1.5 million viewers. One of those teams in the Big 12, Christian, one of them in the Pac-12. If you look historically, and Utah fans can be upset, Big 12 fans can be upset, people are watching this conference. People are watching Kansas State. People are watching Utah and UCF. This league, to me, namely when our games are on Saturdays and we play our rivalries on rivalry weekend, those are the kind of games that make the Big 12 still feel like this conference is more than relevant at the top.
Absolutely. No, that is definitely the case. And the numbers are interesting. There's no doubt about that. But when you see that Baylor is already doing that in a certain amount, looking at those numbers compared to what Utah was in the past, I don't know if that's a Big 12 problem. I think that might be a brand problem on the Utah side of things. And to me, that's really interesting because Utah was a very successful team last year, but then you're focused on saying the numbers are down compared to when you were a worse or somewhat better team in the other conferences. This one's interesting to me. Although there hasn't been, look, every single Big 12 team program, whatever the case may be, hasn't been the most relevant over the last couple of years. Oklahoma State was a world beater. They've been at the bottom of the conference for quite some time. Kansas State, like we said, we talked about in the first segment, thought they were going to be a Big 12 contender. They finished 6-6. Some of the other schools have been fallen into that line as well. And Utah played those, right? The last game of the season, one of the last games of the season, Kansas State and Utah played. Kansas State broke a single season record. Joe Jackson did. And those numbers weren't that great because Kansas State was out of bowl contention, right? And Utah was out of the college football conversation as well. I think the fact that the committees and the fact they're not giving enough love to the Big 12 is maybe hurting the numbers. But I don't think it's an actual conference thing, but I think it's more focused on maybe the programs itself. And in this case, you might have to look at Utah under a little bit more of a microscope.
That's a great point here. And two, the ebb and flow of Utah could be something they bring up. Like, well, you know, some years we were good. Most years we were good. Then there was some blip here, blip there. 7-5, early Pac-12. But Baylor wasn't. Baylor actually really, really sucked at times during that same span I just gave you, where the Bears out viewershipped the Utah Utes by 200,000. And I think it showcased that ultimately maybe there was a Pac-12 problem, that a team like Utah that did contend for a good portion of those years, didn't just ebb and flow, but also spent some time at the top of the league, wasn't a viewership juggernaut. Christian, I think those numbers, and you're a Pacific Northwest guy, I think those numbers are indicative of part of the reason the Pac-12 just couldn't sustain.
Yeah, and that's true. And like really what they lived on was the Pac-12 after dark. And that was more of a West Coast, middle of the country kind of thing on the late Saturday nights, and really tried to push that. And if they do push that in the new time, when the new Pac-12 rolls around, maybe that'll help them at least be seen as one of the top group of 6 conferences when it's all said and done. But looking at it from a Utah standpoint, do you expect those numbers to be better this year after losing Kyle Whittingham? Do you expect those numbers to be just as good this year when, maybe you brought back some of your mainstay players, but do you expect to still be as good as a college football playoff contender? You have a really strong opportunity. Going back to that first segment, we discussed about having the lack of Friday games or lack of Saturday games. There is Utah only has to play one Friday game. That's at home against West Virginia. So you get the opportunity to kind of bring back that Pac-12 after dark spark on a Friday night. Does that actually benefit you or does that hurt you? So when you're looking at those numbers, I really wonder if Utah is going to be even in the case of better than last year or worse. I tend to lean towards if those numbers are going to be lower than last year, because I think the team is going to be less performing than it was the year prior.
Wow, yeah,
I have Utah as one of my biggest followers this year, so maybe I'm a hater.
Wow. All right, Christian Rao. We'll get to where you think Kansas State will be if they're one of the biggest risers in the conference a little bit later in the show. But this is an extension of this, Christian. And I could be wrong. I'm going to give you this without a question. This is just a statement of fact that I think is fact, and then get your thoughts. We saw a team like UCLA last year that at one point in the season after their Penn State win, the new Heisel story, it's a must-watch team. I want to turn my TV. I just want to see what they're doing. I want to get an update on UCLA. Texas Tech, so dominant. Must-watch team. Trinidad Chambliss, as a player, so dominant. I want to watch a Trinidad Chambliss game because he's that good at Ole Miss. Since Utah got in the Big 12, they've had big matchups like Texas Tech last year. But I can't think of a tangible moment where we said, I've got to watch Utah this season for this player or this moment or this thing. I never got that. Is this more of a Utah? You've been alluding to it. Is this a total Utah problem? Because you never had that one, I've got to see them for this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I agree with that. And I think that's not just a Utah problem. I think you can point that to other schools in the Big 12 that have that problem too. Kansas State might even fall in that conversation. But looking at it from a Utah standpoint, I don't even think that's a problem from just last year. Although Dampier was supposed to be a good quarterback, and he definitely exceeded my expectations in the whole Big 12 quarterback rankings, how we talked about it all last offseason, how crazy all the quarterbacks were in the conference. He definitely exceeded my expectations in those numbers when it was all said and done. He didn't jump the needle, at least in the eyes of you must watch TV, like the Trinidad Chambliss conversation that you just brought up. Going back even farther, Cam Rising, the biggest things that we talked about Cam Rising was jokes about him being eligible for AARP benefits because he was so old, right? So other than that, there wasn't really a performance standpoint. And you bring up UCLA. They were the first team to fire their head coach on the season. They had a turnaround point of the year. You had the Ole Miss situation. Utah never really had that. They had, I'm a good team. I'm a team that could potentially make it to the college football playoffs, but we'll just fall flat. And at the end of the year, blame the committee if you want. I think you definitely could have an argument there. It just wasn't enough to move that needle. I think that's a perfect statement, Drake.
Yeah. We'll end it with this and then get into Kansas State more specifically. And I have to, as a Big 12 analyst, do Kansas State fans, do football fans even care about viewership? Like, is this something that should even be on their radar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be because, look, at the end of the day, you're not seen as the tier one of college football right now. And you could say all of college athletics. As much as you want to say that the Big 12, definitely it's the best college basketball conference in America right now. We've proven that. Even with the shortcomings towards the end of the tournament. But overall, the season's been great. And in football, it's been one of the best conferences, at least top three year in and year out as well. But the Big Ten and the SEC still find a way to dominate, at least in some sort nationally or a regionals type of demographic, if you will. The Big 12 has to find those aggressive ways. And I think Brett Yormark is still the right guy to make that move. I just think he needs to find his way to focus on other things that is not, hey, let's play on Friday nights and alienate half our fan base. Hey, let's go overseas and make sure that we can't afford a ticket. Hey, let's have a glass court that maybe is fun for some of the fans in the nosebleeds, but it'll give migraines to the players. Like, you got to find a way to be a little bit more realistic to make this conference stick out.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian Rao, Locked On Kansas State, nailing it. And hopefully you can nail this. Kansas State football contender? If that's the statement, how do you qualify it? This is Locked On Big 12, Locked On Kansas State. Today's show is brought to you by my friends at TurboTax. Look, taxes previously felt stressful, right? But doesn't have to be. It's tax time. For a lot of us, the old way of doing it is a lot. Try booking an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. Meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment with TurboTax.